I was thinking of her as the chair. All right, hi everyone, welcome to the June 19th, 2024 Environmental Quality Commission meeting. This is an in-person and virtual meeting with the Environmental Quality Commission, members, city staff, and members of the public. If we could start with a roll call, I'd like to introduce staff and EQC members present. In the room, we have myself, Chair Schmidt, we have Vice Chair McKenna, Commissioners Hill and Meyer. We have Commissioner Headley LaRocca joining virtually using provisions from the Brown Act. Commissioner Pellegrini-Opar is joining. No, he is absent, correct? Yeah, and then we have Commissioner Kissel joining virtually using which one?
He's not going to be able to participate today.
Oh, he's here.
Yes, he's not at a publicly available location, so he's just observing.
Oh, got it. So Commissioner Kissel is observing the meeting today. And then staff present includes Sustainability Manager Rachel Lunder and Management Analyst 2, Ori Paz. So Ms. Lunder, would you please provide instructions to the commission and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Awesome. Thank you, Chair Schmidt and members of the Environmental Quality Commission. We ask that any members of the EQC remain on screen for the duration of the meeting. You will control your own webcam and microphone. Staff may engage with webcam and microphones to make presentations or respond to members of the EQC. For members of the public who are in attendance and wish to provide public comment, after the chair calls for public comment on the item you wish to speak on, please find a speaker card on the ledge over there and hand it to Ori or myself. If you're joining virtually, you may engage the raise hand feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or you can press *9 if you are calling in. I believe that's all the instructions I have for you today, and I return the meeting back to Chair Schmidt.
Thanks. All right, so under public comment, the section of the agenda, the public may address the commission on any subject not listed on the agenda. So each speaker may address the commission once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. While you're not required to provide your name or city of residence, it is helpful. The commission cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the commission cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment, other than to provide general information. So Sustainability Manager Lunder, please call for public comment.
Thank you. I'll call for comment at this time. If you'd like to make comment on item not on the agenda, we have public comment cards over there on that ledge that you can fill out and hand back to me. You can hit the raise hand feature on the bottom of your Zoom screen, or if you're calling in by phone, you can press *9 and we will unmute you. I don't see any public comment in the room, and it doesn't look like there's any online. So we may proceed.
Okay, excellent. So section D of the agenda, regular business. We'll start out with section D1, approving the May 15th, 2024 Environmental Quality Commission meeting minutes. Any clarifying questions from the EQC before we take public comment? Ms. Lunder, do we have any public comment?
Let me call for public comment. If you're in person, you can pull a speaker card from that ledge and hand it over to me or Lori. If you're on Zoom, you can engage the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. And if you're calling in by phone, you can press *9. Give it a second. I don't see any public comment in the room or online.
Okay, excellent. Why don't we open it up for EQC discussion? Any discussion we want to have on the minutes from May 15th? Or Nancy virtually, or Commissioner Vogel. Okay, then I think we need to make a motion. Anyone like to make a motion on the minutes?
I move that we approve the minutes.
Second, fantastic. So what do I say? The minutes are passed as resolved or whatever the.
No, we'll now vote, take a vote.
We'll take a vote, yeah. Correct.
And since we have folks, since we have one commissioner joining virtually, we have to do a roll call vote. So that's what we'll do for the rest of the meeting. So a motion by Commissioner Hill and a second by Commissioner Meyer to approve the May 15th minutes. Roll call vote, Chair Schmidt.
Yes.
Okay. Vice Chair McKenna.
Yes.
Commissioner Hill.
Yes.
Commissioner Headley LaRocca.
Yes.
Commissioner Kissel absent. And Commissioner Khalid absent. And did I get you, Commissioner Meyer?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes with 5 in favor and 2 absent.
Excellent. So let's move on to agenda item D2, where we'll review and discuss the annual report out presentation to City Council. And I guess we're gonna pull up the slides, right? Or no, we do it's got the clarifying questions, but should we pull up the slides? Yeah. Just by way of setting the stage as well. So this is the report out we do annually. I think I got voluntold that I was gonna do that to City Council, which I'm happy to do. We put together a draft, but I felt it was really important to get everybody's input. So there'll be a few blanks in there, and please, when we get to that portion, please, let's have it as an active discussion, because I want to represent everybody's points of view.
Do you want to call for clarifying questions and then public comment?
Do we do that before I actually show them?
Oh, sorry.
Don't I
No.
gotta review the presentation first, right?
But we have public questions before we show anything, right?
No, we'll show.
Yes, because how would they know how to ask?
It's before we deliberate. That's it.
Yeah.
Just catch them. Okay.
My script is totally complete here. Presentation. All right, fantastic. I'm not gonna actually, I'm not gonna go through this in a ton of detail, but just wanted to show you how we constructed it. It was based on how Commissioner LaRocca Headley did it the previous year when she was chair. So this is very much structured based on that presentation. So I think a lot of you will recognize it. Let's go to the next slide. So, what we really need to sort of stick to as much as we can is what have we done as EQC? So I know a lot of us are active resident activists, and we are involved in a lot of projects. And so what we learned last year was to try to separate that as much as possible to make sure it's really focused on EQC roles and priorities and what we've actually done. And then we'll talk a little bit about looking forward. There'll be hopefully a little bit of brainstorming. I've got some thoughts, but this is the part that I really want to make sure we have some perspective on. And then seeking guidance from City Council is what will happen in July. So next slide. I'm not going to read this. This is just us as the commission. So this is setting the stage for them. I think this is helpful as is there any way to?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. This Zoom panel's not working.
I think everybody can read this, but I'll voice over it really quickly because this kind of is what it is, but we can obviously change any language that we want if we feel strongly about it. But the roles and responsibilities really are, we're an advisory group. We're advising City Council on, the main things around climate change, environmental protection, and sustainability. Those are pretty broad terms. So sometimes that expands, sometimes it contracts. The priorities that we've identified as a group are the climate action plan, clearly. The other one that's emerged as part of the climate action plan is around resilience and adaptation. And given the breadth of what that could entail, I feel like looking forward, that's probably going to be a big chunk of the work now that we've updated the climate action plan. So it's good we're talking about it. Urban canopy, I think many of you heard Nancy and I in particular kind of, talk about this on a pretty regular basis. The great news is the city led the way for the urban forest management plan, which was a city priority. That budget has turned into $3.6 million. It's $250,000 in budget turned into $3.6 million of ask to CAL FIRE. And so the city was the lead on one, Canopy was the lead on a second, and Job Training was the lead on the third. So even if we get one of those grants, it's going to turn $250,000 into $1.5 million. And that's great. So the urban canopy we'll talk about a little bit more, but definitely a focus, a growing focus of this group. And then the catch-all category is really around green and sustainable initiatives. So if there are other things we want to bring in front of the group, things like city-led events, and a lot of the work that John and the 350 team have done, there's space to discuss that kind of stuff. I don't know that we talk about habitat protection that much, but I think I like this category, this last category, because it's a little bit of a catch-all for what we might need. So maybe next slide. This is just to communicate that to city council, and then we can. So what I tried to do with those 4 priorities was flesh them out a little bit more, so that city council could understand what that really looked like for us as a commission. So the main piece of work that we did as a group, and I think a couple of our commissioners kind of came in on the tail end of this, but we spent a big chunk of last year updating the climate action plan scope of work for the next 5 years, which is the tail end of our 2030 goal. I would assume at some point we're going to reset that bar in the coming years, but this was a lot of the work we did last year, guided by city staff. And then these are the 6 goals that are in the plan itself. What we found, I think, and I'm going to try to voice over this, is some actions were getting more focused, some were paused. And, with the valuable real estate that's in the climate action plan, the ability to drive change, I don't think that felt very good for a lot of us. So we wanted to make sure all 6 of these are kind of moving full speed as much as we can through, different ways of working, new partnerships and other things. Some actions needed to be adjusted, just things have moved in the last 5 years. I think, a good example is the police pilot with the Teslas, where we learned a lot. It's moving forward. We're still moving. Police Chief Norris came in and told us, let's keep going. It's not going to transform the entire fleet, but we want to keep going. So that sort of was what we were looking at for needing new realities. And then I'm just outlining for the city council how we kind of did it. We discussed it as a group. We set up subcommittees. We brought in research, and then we finalized a recommendation. So you guys can read this, but this is just a description of the city council that we went through a very thorough process, I think. So Rachel, maybe the next slide. This is also to give them probably some first exposure to CAP 6. So a few of us were in that subcommittee and really started to make a recommendation aligned to the state of California, where it's headed around 4 major themes. One around, I'll try to do this by memory, one around awareness and making sure people are knowing that climate change is here now and what they should do. The second is around community engagement and how we get the community mobilized. So things like, Lynn's area with MDC Ready, how do we make sure we can mobilize as much of the community for the climate change actions that are here today? So that's a second big pillar of work in there. The third is going to be hardening our built infrastructure and looking at, are we ready with climate change to make sure that if it's 95 degrees in the summer, where do we go? Do we have cooling stations in Belhaven, kind of a thing? And then the fourth pillar is around nature-based solutions. So the urban forest fits really nicely into there. So this is going to be a really big piece of work that addresses these kind of here now, the impacts of climate change that are here now, not the 10-year mitigation for temperature. That's still the majority of the climate action plan, but this part felt like it wasn't getting enough attention. So there'll be a lot of work, I think, going into this around heat, health, storms, wildfires, all that kind of stuff. So the third, I won't spend a lot of time here, but the urban canopy, as I kind of alluded to before, there was a lot of work going on. The EQC got an update in February 2024. There was a community coalition that had come together with a strong focus on Belhaven. But really the rationale was the health impacts in Belhaven. And we had the example of East Palo Alto's urban forest management plan to go off of. So that created a lot of momentum to move faster for us here. And I think all credit to Rachel and staff, because they recognized this was an opportunity that was just sitting there waiting for us. So I'm super happy that this is that this is sort of one of the priorities of the group. And then separately in March, we actually listened to our first heritage tree ordinance appeal. So I didn't realize it was the first, but we had there was the discussion around removing Coast Live Oak at 219 Durham. And that I think got, we discussed it. I think we realized that we needed to look at the heritage tree administrative guidelines as part of that, because it didn't feel great to some of us in the room, was my impression. And I think it actually got kicked up to city council for a final petition sometime in July, if I'm not mistaken. I should probably look that up, but we'll talk a little bit about this in the later section about forward looking, but the fact that we adjudicated our very first heritage tree ordinance appeal as an EQC was a bit of an eye-opening moment for a lot of us. And then the last priority, pretty straightforward. All I tried to do here was list out some of the things that we had discussed that didn't fit in those other three categories. So like I said, sort of a catch-all. So PCE, the PCE solar program, the Tesla pilot that I mentioned that Ori was working on with Chief Norris, the urban management plan, permit streamlining, and then some of the discussions we've been having pretty regularly around metrics and progress reports. So what I just tried to do is give them a kind of a catch-all set of catch-all items for the catch-all category. And then I think, and then just listed a number of other activities as well. So as we were working on this, it felt like a really busy year, actually. And we had great things that we didn't necessarily drive as an EQC, but the city and the EQC were a part of. So things like the Love Our Earth Festival. John and I are talking to Miss Ward, that for those who want to see I think I sent them to Zach, but if you want to see the letters from Mrs. Ward's fourth grade class, they had suggestions for the EQC. It was awesome. So we're going to be engaging with her to how do we keep that momentum going? So that's happening in the background, and hopefully we'll have the kids come in and talk to us or do some other things. So we did a lot of other things. The Zelly incentive program recommendations, and finally the implementation of that. Anyway, I'll try not to babble on as I present that because I only have 10 minutes, but it was a busy year. So the last part is really, so you're going to laugh, but the looking forward EQC plans. I've had a few suggestions, but I'm not going to sort of say, here's the 10 things I would like to see, but I really want to open it up. So the next slide is empty, which just means I would, I think in talking to Rachel, would just love everybody's view on what should we put forward as our future focus. Outside of the climate action plan, there are other opportunities. So I'll give you one example. We talked about, we're going to probably be talking about the heritage tree, not the ordinance itself, because that's more complicated, but reviewing and updating the administrative guidelines. So I would imagine moving forward, we're going to want to make sure that's a key part of what we're focused on. But I'd love to hear everybody else's ideas around what are some sort of plans for the future that we could start to look at. And then I guess, I want to, sorry, I'm so used to opening up for comment. Let me finish the presentation. We'll do public and then we'll discuss it in EQC. This is and then this is the guidance that the questions that we're going to ask City Council. So at the end of a 10-minute presentation, usually, all right, we would like your guidance on A, and these are the two questions. And obviously, if you guys think of better questions, I would love to hear it. This was actually a little trickier than I realized because we don't necessarily want them going too far off of the climate action plan and coming up with something that takes us, off the beaten path. But obviously, we want to hear their views. So that's the deck, right? Did I get them all? Okay, so before we open it up, are there any clarifying questions about structure of the deck, the process we want to go through? And that will be a tight 10 minutes, by the way. That was my first time talking about that out loud, so we'll rehearse. Okay, we'll have a discussion in a minute, but Ms. Launder, maybe we open it up for public comments on this item.
Yeah, that sounds great. If anyone in the room would like to make public comment, we have cards on that ledge over there and you can fill them out and pass it to Ori or myself. If you are on Zoom, you can engage the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. or I believe it's on the left if you're on your cell phone Zoom. And if you're calling in, you can press *9, and we will unmute you. And it looks like we have some public comment coming in the room, so we'll give it a moment. And we'll check online. I'm not seeing. Anything?
No worries, hands visible at this time.
We'll wait for folks in the room, and you'll have to be super thorough with the card, you can always circle back and fill in any details too. Okay. We're still waiting for some public comment cards in the room.
It's like Final Jeopardy when everybody's writing.
Just need the music.
Going.
They probably all know the theme music too.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure we do, but nobody's gonna.
They'll need to hear word.
Scott.
Okay, well, we can start with our first public comment.
There it goes.
Yeah, oh, you didn't,
There's,
you didn't
there's,
even have to sing.
there's your whole next week inside your head.
Okay, we have 3 public comment cards in the room. I'll first call Lynn Bramlett. We do 2 minutes.
Depending on how many we have.
So we can do 3 minutes for public comment, and we'll have it on the screen for you here.
All right, I'll stand up if that's okay. So I'm Lynn Bramlett. Thank you, Jeff. And I'm a resident in Menlo Park. I walked here in case you're wondering about my attire. And I'm the leader of Menlo Park Community Ready, which is a volunteer-based meet your neighbors. We encourage that, get socially connected, get household prepared for the unexpected, and then work with neighbors to get prepared. And so there's a lot of possible commonality with what you're doing here, and actually climate change ready is part of our mission statement. And so many of our people are connected in the community. I'm connected to a church, I belong to a club, we meet other people. These are opportunities in the best spirit of the way of kind of extending the message out. We too wanted to get more youth and families involved. We had good success getting the scout troops more involved. And these are opportunities for some kind of, in the future, joint educational outreach, like we had thought about preparing for short and long-term power outages. And for me, it would totally be solar and battery. And when you talk about sustainability, I have a garden in the back. There's just a lot of opportunities, even solar cooking. I have solar ovens and things that could be kind of creative for the youth. So I'll just say here, I'm here to listen. I probably won't speak again tonight anyway, but there's just opportunity as we move forward to do some joint work. And we have done a little bit with Nancy and John, I think came, and Jeff too, at something, if not official, but it again kind of moved us forward. So thank you all, and I look forward to meeting some of you that I don't know.
Thank you for your comment. We have a second public comment from Brian Schmidt. And when you're ready, Brian.
Sure. Brian Schmidt from Menlo Park. I think it's great that there's so much to cover. I think the chair, you pointed exactly that out. So I want to add some stuff to it, particularly calling out the work of the building decarbonization subcommittee. I think that might have been mentioned in the scope of work or implied in the scope of work priority 1 discussion. But I think it might be worth calling that out a bit more, since then the council will likely be expecting that, given that they have a study session, it's coming up for that. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention was a possibility for future work could be on habitat enhancement in San Francisco Bay. So dealing with sea level rise in a way that doesn't just respond to the issue, but can help actually help form improvements in the habitat. And one issue that's been dear to my heart is restoration of sea otters, San Francisco Bay, which could actually have some type of restorative benefit on sea level rise by helping restore eelgrass habitat that traps sediment and captures a lot of carbon. So I'm not sure if that's quite ready for, make this a priority now for EQC, but broader habitat enhancement might be a future issue that EQC might be interested in. Thanks.
Thank you for your public comment. We have our third and final public comment in the room, Chala Rakhan. Did I put this up?
Chala. Hi.
Thank you. And you can begin when you're ready.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm new to this. I haven't met most of you, except a couple through different things that I'm trying to do. So I'm a resident in Menlo Park, and I have decided to focus on climate change. I'm doing a fellowship program with Terra.do right now. And as part of that, I was actually looking through your website, and I've seen the climate action plan, and I love the work that you're doing. And I wanted to understand how much progress we have made to get towards it, which I couldn't see on the website. I reached out to Rachel. She was very responsive. So that was great. And I got a chance to come to this meeting. I would love to better understand how much progress we've done towards meeting net zero in Menlo Park as a city. And I couldn't find that information. Also, I don't see it in the slides yet so far. And maybe it's hard to measure, I don't know, but that's a question I still have out in the open, like I haven't been able to answer that. And also, I do notice that your website was maybe out of date, and you're doing amazing work that perhaps isn't very much reflected there. I'm also volunteering to any help with marketing. I'm a marketer, so if you need any help, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you, Chala, for your public comment. Okay, do you want to do one last check online? I didn't see any. So we can close public comment, Jeff. And I return the meeting to you.
Excellent. All right. So why don't we open it up for EQC discussion, and I would say feedback similar to what we heard in public comment about modifying the presentation and then making sure we exit with at least a few ideas to add to the future forward plan as well. So why don't we start with Commissioner Lorca Headley, who has her hand up?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It was also great to hear the public comments. I have a few comments. The first one is regarding priority number 1. So that slide, we referenced some were paused, but it was more my remembrance that City Council had prioritized climate action plans number 1, 3, and 5. And so that's what both staff, I think, and the EQC had been focusing on. I think that happened before my time, though, so we might confirm that. In the agenda, so this is comment number 2, in the agenda, there was a section listed for public comment, but I didn't see any details related to public comment in the actual deck. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I would just miss them. So either we should take it off the agenda or we should go out but I think there were actually some really robust public comments that we might want to go back and share, at least have them printed for the City Council and for the public. You probably wouldn't be able to repeat all of them and meet your 10-minute mark. And then my last comment is regarding the looking forward. I'm wondering if we should essentially move to the next agenda item and figure that out as part of what's our work plan for the next year, and then fill that part of the deck in based on what we decide in the next agenda item tonight. Thank you.
Do that. We can come back to.
We don't need
D2
to
after
vote
that.
on this item, so you would just take what you heard as kind of the priorities from the work plan and independently put it in.
Okay, yeah, sounds great. Okay. I'm okay with that. Well, we can do it a little bit of both. So if I wouldn't want anybody to have to hold their fire if they had. thoughts.
Well, we might comment on the rest of the presentation if we had ideas about the slides that don't have to do with the plan for the year ahead.
That's good. Anybody else want to make comments? Thank you, Nancy, for the thing on the public comments as well, because I think I just was doing it at 2 a.m. and forgot to put them in.
I had one suggestion. Mostly driven by the fact that I'm new to the commission. The updates to the climate action plan, I too noticed that the website's not up to date and wondered if it might be enlightening to the public who are there to mention a few specifics about the areas that were updated. So for instance, we would say we updated our emissions target, or we noted that we made some progress on this or that target. And so high level details would allow the city council to understand what we mean when we say, you said how we did it, but then it would be nice to have a little bit of what we did.
And I think I'll work with both of you to pick out the right couple, if that's okay. Sounds good. Any other commissioner feedback, comments?
I had one other thought.
Of course.
To what extent is it worthwhile to mention that there were pieces that staff did and that we coordinated on? So we have output and there's mention of staff, but we might say, progress on CAP 11 was made by the city council's direction to staff to, buy 100 pencils. Might make the presentation too long, but it could underscore the extent to which our work doesn't happen to any great extent without staff. Or is that understood?
Yeah, it's partially understood. I mean, just to react to that, I appreciate that. I don't know if we know the flows. There are clear things that are very staff driven. So things like the fleet electrification, I don't think we had much to do with that. But then, as Brian was saying, like the building decarbonization, it was definitely a partnership. So I think we'd have to think through. I don't know if we know I don't know if we could designate all of them that way.
Perhaps the one example that I gave for a specific outcome, a specific detail of what happened could be one, if we give one for each page, and one of them might be, here's an example of something that we did.
Yeah, something
Deeply
illustrative.
staff drove this, we drove that.
May I offer something?
Please, yeah.
On this slide, like with the zero emission landscaping equipment, just to ground it in a process that we did together, EQC recommended the incentive program. Staff developed or built out the proposal. It went to city council. City council approved it, staff did the RFP and is running the program. Like, is that the level you're looking for?
That's a great example. It popped into my head when we were going through the CAP updates.
Yeah.
That's really where it hit me, but I love your example.
And I think it goes beyond the incentive program. It's also the policy, right? I wasn't here for that either, but the EQC recommended the policy to the Zelli ordinance. We could look back.
I think what I could do, it's really good feedback. I think what I could do is I'll figure out a place to put in a general comment of this is all done with a strong partnership between city staff and EQC, which will touch on the implicitness of that, but also then I can pick out a couple of examples, like the Zelli's a good example, where I can say, hey, here's an example, because that keeps me from having to read everything. And then I can say, here's an example of the partnership. This was done by staff. This was done by EQC, that it all came together. It's hitting the street in July, right? Something like that. So yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. We wouldn't have time to do it for each one, but I could dive into Zelli as an example.
Yeah, just one select detail on each page.
Okay.
There's probably a good reason, I just don't know what it is. On priority 4 page, it mentions the urban forest management plan, and priority 3 page all about the urban canopy. I wonder whether the forest management plan isn't on the canopy page.
Oh, I only put it there just because we did the actual update in February. So this was meant to just be the updates, the EQC discussions and actions that were taken as a result. So this is almost like a log of when these things happened. But yeah, it's totally the
Yeah,
same.
I get it now. I knew there was a reason.
Commissioner Headley had her hand up.
Oh, there we go. Commissioner Headley.
Yeah, well, I agree with that last comment. I feel like it would flow just a little bit better and have a bit of celebratoriness to the priority number 3 slide. But if you could go back to the other initiatives, which I think might be the next slide. I was curious about the last bullet where it says approved prior to September 18th. It was confusing to me. Are we talking about last September or are we talking about the work plan that we're working on right now? It feels like the tenses for developing and approved are inconsistent. And it-
Yeah, that's, it should be developed, I think, because that was the last one, or is it this one? No, I'm confused.
The date, September 18th, is our date this year for the deadline,
So maybe we say currently developing new annual work plan. Okay, that's a really good catch.
Yeah, well, I feel like developing the annual work plan is good. Subcommittee established to be approved. I
Yeah,
think just even
okay.
adding to be would make sense.
Got it. Okay, that's a good one. And what was your comment, Nan? I missed the celebratory agreement comment.
Oh, there was
which
this-
one?
Priority 3 was talking about the urban forest management plan, but it's very exciting about the grant. So I was agreeing with Susanna that maybe we move the comment from the number 4 priority up to
Okay.
number 3.
Yeah, okay, that sounds good. Okay.
But if there's no example of anything else we did in February, you could just repeat that.
Now it's, I mean, I'm not gonna read each one. If I had 30 minutes, then I would sort of boringly.
Mhm.
I don't think they would put that, so. Okay, sounds good.
Can you actually go back? Oh, I was also thinking about Brian Schmidt's comment about priority number 1, which has 6 priorities, but we have spent a lot of time on caps 1 and cap 5. So I do wonder if there needs to be a bit more emphasis on cap 1 and the different things that have happened there. But maybe that's connected to the other activities in the log of the actions that we've taken.
It's a good point. I can call out. The nice thing about doing it the way we're doing it, I think, is I can just choose examples. So I think, as Brian was saying, I can say, all right, well, here's an example of where we spend a lot of time, building electrification and decarbonization, multiple discussions, months of subcommittee work. I think I can emphasize. Okay.
So this is approaching the realm of, I think, what you used to call polishing the turd, but nevertheless, I noticed that across the pages of priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, the layout of the page, so the content and what was presented varied. And then it occurred to me, I wonder if we might be able to have subheadings that are consistent across each page. So it would be something like key activities and then achievements across all the pages.
Let me look at that one in particular because there's a couple of odd personnel categories that I think I tried to make that work, but I'll look at it again. But it was one of those weird things of particularly category for priority 4, which is this catch-all. So there weren't really achievements. It was just a reporting out of discussions that we had.
Yeah.
But I'll look again just to see if I can make it work.
Yeah, I just noticed that priority 4 is sort of a list of things by month, and then priority 3 is some nice outcomes, and then priority 1 is a little bit more process. So they vary in
Yeah.
terms of what they're communicating.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'll look at that again. I might come back to city staff and see if we wanted to add an extra slide of like a key achievement, things that might be milestones on the webpage eventually. So maybe something we could brainstorm a little as well, that might call that out. Okay. Well, so for the good of the order, why don't we, unless there's any other feedback? Oh, yeah, please.
Split hairs a little
Yeah,
bit for Mrs. Ward, we should change it to Ms. Ward, because that's how she addresses herself in the letters.
Say that one more time.
On the other activities, when we talk about Mrs. Ward's fourth grade class, we should change it to Ms. Ward.
Oh, right,
She
yeah, thanks.
addresses herself that way.
Are you a former student,
I
Zachary?
am a former student of Ms. Ward.
That must have been one,
So,
Awesome. Cool. Thank you very much. Okay, sounds great. So I think what we'll do, and I can always retrofit this depending on how the discussion goes. So as I understand, we don't need to call for a motion or a vote. This is just feedback that I'll take and incorporate for delivery, but then we'll move on to the work plan, and then we'll try to sync that into the last section. I think if that's it, we can close that agenda item, no? Sounds good? Okay.
Nice work, Jeff.
Thanks. So now why don't we move on to agenda item D3, where we'll review and discuss the Environmental Quality Commission 2024-2025 work plan that we'll submit to City Council. And then I think, Ms. Lunder, are you gonna actually review the draft?
Yes. I will bring up a working copy. So we can edit it in real time. I get to share now. Is that readable to folks in the room? I was downloading it. I'm just downloading a version so I can make it more readable.
So we're taking a minute to discuss how we're going to discuss this.
Actually, I think we're gonna be plugging topics, right?
Yeah, so I guess you could turn it over to the subcommittee to introduce the item.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'll turn over to the subcommittee to discuss that. Yeah, please.
so this is the work plan that the three of us, council, or no, Commissioner, Kissel, right? And that he's not here, absent, and then
Commissioner Pellegrini.
yeah, the review part worked on. These are our goals, and I think a large part of this was kind of recycled from the last year's work plan and kind of, put our own little touches on it. Goals are to provide feedback to staff and advise city on 2025-23 scope of work implementation for the climate action plan, strategies 1 through 6. Support the development of an urban forest management plan. Maintain an annual commission calendar to provide transparency and allow adequate time to prepare agenda items related to the commission's work plan. Update and post for public review monthly. Encourage and facilitate robust public comment and participation at commission meetings. Foster a public meeting environment that is inclusive of all members of the diverse Menlo Park community. And support the filling of openings on the commission and the effective onboarding of new commissioners. So we move down to kind of the layout. We recycled this from the last year's plan, and the stuff that's already on the work plan is kind of the normal regular items that are kind of like given to us, like stuff that we don't really have a say in. I guess, is how we could describe it. Like putting together the subcommittees, talking with the arborists, and, you know, talking with the city council. And we scroll down, kind of get like a better look at the regular items and read through them. And we reiterated the commission priorities. And if we go below there, that's kind of where our planning work started. We took some of the suggestions from the last meeting and then also some of our own brainstorming and put them into what we thought could be ideas for ad hoc subcommittees going into the next fiscal year. Based off of like, what we talked about and what our priorities are for a commission, looking at urban forest management and the canopy, community education and engagement, looking at transportation that is beyond EVs and EV charging, by looking at like multimodal and other sustainable transportation methods, looking at water usage and storage, talking more about climate change resilience and adaptation, looking at waste management and pollution prevention, and then another committee to look at the cap goals, updates and revisions. And under that, there are other topics that we talked about that we haven't necessarily fit into like the committee, or also give a little bit more context to like how we got to these suggestions for activities. Okay. How do we move on?
Yeah, so the idea is, if I may, because I got the privilege of spending a couple of sessions working through these other topics, TBD with the ad hoc subcommittee, is to get as many of these as possible onto the calendar today. And we could start that by walking through all of them and prioritizing them. And then we know we can fit 2 items per meeting, so we can pick the highest priority ones and start putting them into the calendar. And any remaining ones would be kind of a other topics catch-all at the bottom of the document, but we really want to do our due diligence to keep that section focused, what the EQC can actually feasibly do in a year, rather than kind of the kitchen sink approach. It helps us prioritize and focus with council and our city manager, and the public as well, so they, you know, kind of see something that we have no intent or have time to do. It can be confusing, and so one recommendation is to kind of go through these and prioritize them, and then go through the exercise of putting them on the calendar and seeing what remains. And if there's anything that's high priority that's not reflected in the agenda, maybe there's an opportunity to reevaluate the agenda or include it as another topic at the end of the work. And so that's one approach that the EQC could take. Other commissioners may provide other opportunities. We published this item early to provide ample time for feedback, and so maybe it's less of an exercise of reading through each item, but rather commissioners sharing maybe their top priorities. And I can take notes on this document in real time, or we could organize our thinking in the.
The only potential recommendation is, because we combined the previous one and the other, do we also want to take a minute to add to the, if we didn't see something here, do we want to add to the list?
That would be a fantastic time. So if there's anything missing, now's a good time to call it out. If there's anything confusing, this is a good time to ask clarifying questions.
So why don't we do, because this part's gonna be more of a discussion, I think, then would the proper order be clarifying questions, public comment, and then we really dive in? Does that, yeah? Okay, so are there any based on what you saw here and the process we just discussed, any clarifying questions from the EQC before turning it over to the comment?
That's just a clarifying question. In the calendar, it says May 2025, update on building electrification, outreach and education. So does the staff know already like what the plan is before May? Like, is there a program in place for outreach and education that you will then come to the EQC with an update on, or is that plan still being developed?
Yeah, this is relative to the $4.5 million grant, and just the timing of bringing this to the EQC prior to making a decision on the second half of the funds. So it's kind of the halfway mark of the funds, but that could be further explained or even moved up. Or something different entirely, but that was the intent.
And so I guess I have myself, I have a clarifying question as well. So would we do what we did in previous years where we get as much as we can on the calendar and then we have kind of a reserve bucket so that way we have permission to talk about it? So just to clarify, we didn't have everything. We had a lot of topics, last year that we wanted to be able to discuss, but wouldn't plug into the month by month, and we don't want to run 17-hour meetings. So we had a kind of a category of reserve topics, and then that allowed us as a commission to actually talk about them, because if they're not on the work plan, then they're sort of outside of our scope of work. So I was just checking to make sure that if something doesn't make the calendar, let's make sure if it's important, it goes into the reserve or other topics, whatever we call it. So that way we have permission to discuss it as we proceed.
So we would have a list of topics that we might then drop onto the agenda for the coming month if we feel as though
Potentially, yeah.
that we would agendize this list, where appropriate.
I think so, yeah, because if I remember correctly, the urban forest management plan was one of those kind of other topics, because it hadn't matured enough and CAL FIRE hadn't actually issued the grant. So we kind of kept it in our back pocket, and then we did slot it in I think February. Okay, so,
Commissioner LaRocca Headley has.
oh yes, please. Nancy. Commissioner Headley.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to just clarify what our objective is for this time together. Is it to essentially fill out this Word doc? Is that what we're trying to do together in this hour or so?
Yes, and
Okay.
The subcommittee is still an active subcommittee, so if that's too monumental of a task, or we're feeling like there may be voices not in the room,
Okay.
we could work on just prioritizing the topics or adding topics, and entrusting the subcommittee to build out the calendar.
Okay, great. I have one last question. Like as an example, May 2025, electing the chair and the vice chair usually doesn't take that long. So I wonder, I guess in my experience, we've usually had time for 2 meaty discussions and then any kind of admin actions. So I wonder, like, I think we could probably have an additional thing in May. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank. I had one more clarifying question based on what Nancy said. Sorry, I'm drawing a blank. It was, something about process. It'll come back to me.
I'll give you a minute.
Yeah, please go.
So similar question on the March 2025 received climate action plan progress report. Just curious what staff has in mind for that. There have been some comments tonight about metrics and whatnot. Is that something that staff is developing and foresees being part of our progress report?
Yeah, that would be our annual progress report that goes to city council. And currently the format of those progress reports don't have the mission metrics. They have more of the data reflecting our program activities. So like, number of outreach events, number of permits pulled. It's doesn't get into the quantification. So TBD if quantification would be a part of that.
Sounds good. Thank you for that minute, by the way. Need stronger coffee. So question on process, clarifying question. To Nancy's point, I would definitely love to make sure our commissioners who are not here have a chance to input into this. So keeping the subcommittee open, I think would be my recommendation. The only question I have is, does that delay anything? Will we have the time frame to be able to do that so that Eduardo and Brian can comment?
Yeah, this could be approved at the July meeting and that would be fine. It could even be approved at the August meeting. And that would be.
Do we want to agendize discussion part 2 for next meeting?
Potentially, yeah, I think that's a really good idea. It
We
just,
could pull together some sort of a structure and then next week,
yeah, that sounds good. We'll lock it down. Okay, any other clarifying questions from the EQC before we open it up for public comment? Awesome, thanks for that. So, Ms. Lunder, why don't we, check and see if we have any public comment?
Sure. If you're in the room and you'd like to give public comment, we have speaker cards on the left and over to Ori and myself. If you are on Zoom, you can hit the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen, or you can press *9 if you are calling in. We'll give it a moment for folks in the room and online. I do have one public comment card in the room. Okay, we'll start with our first public comment. Lynn Bramlett.
It's me again. So I had an idea that kind of pertains to some of your subcommittees and your educational programs. And I just want to mention that I belong to Trinity Church and they just put on solar panels. And actually, Josie is a member of the church who led that project. And we don't use single-use plastic either. It's all biodegradable. Katie Barussi, by the way, belongs there too. So I didn't see on your plan solar, and I don't know how, what is, I see electrification but not solar. But our faith community is part of our town. And down the road, just kind of keep it in mind. It could possibly, I think there would be willingness there because the philosophy is very, in fact, that is one of our priorities, resiliency, climate resiliency. It could possibly down the road be like, not a model, but something people could visit, talk with people, maybe other houses of worship that wanted to go solar too. And I had lunch today with Brandon Bond, who is the city's new emergency preparedness. I'm not sure, the title was kind of evolving and maybe I don't have it quite right, but he mentioned getting a CERT trailer from the fire district and maybe parking it at one of the church, houses of worship. He didn't have one in mind. And then, they could be cooling centers during the heat waves. They're trusted sources for the community. And then people go to these places. And then that's also a way of kind of getting the word out in the community. So I would just, make it a tickler, how to get in touch with me. And I think there are people there who would, if that were something of interest, that could, we could. And I also see coalition building what you're doing. Okay.
I don't have any other public comment in the room. Check on that. I don't see any hands raised. So we can close public comment and I return the meeting to you, Jeff.
So why don't we open it up for EQC discussion? Let me make an attempt to summarize what I think we talked about, and please correct me if I'm wrong. So let's maybe take a minute to add a few topics that we might not have seen from the brainstorming of the subcommittee. And then once we have that, we would do maybe a basic prioritization. We could come up with a scheme to do that, high, medium, low, or you get 3 votes or however we do it. And then once we prioritize, then I think we put them on the calendar. We prioritize, then things go in the kind of parking lot with the other section. And then finally, we get them on the calendar as much as we can plug them in. And then the subcommittee will go back and refine that. And then to Commissioner Hill's point, then we would come back next month and after that refinement, maybe give it another whirl. That sound all right to everybody?
I wonder if we have criteria for our prioritization in terms of what we need to do the hardest in order to achieve a particular metric, or what is left unfinished that needs to be carried through urgently before we start something new. I don't have a sense of what those would be, but perhaps they exist.
Just to maybe add to that as well, is there a feeling of, are we far away from something? Because we've got a 5-year stretch. So I like the hardest or the furthest from the goal. Like, did we make sure that's a little more stacked up the priority list? It just, sorry, I don't mean to put you both on the spot, but to city staff, maybe have any thoughts about an effective way to prioritize? What would be helpful as a criteria set.
We were talking about this earlier.
Okay.
As far as prioritizing, it would really be most helpful, and from my perspective, to hear from you all, especially projects that align with climate action plan implementation and going back to the role of the EQC as a policy advisory entity, what sort of programs and policies the EQC would be interested in advising on. And so making sure that all of the programs kind of fit that is one way to prioritize. Another thing that's a super high priority for us is that $4.5 million grant with the CEC. And so I think any actions that can support us in effectively spending that money and communicating to the public about it is paramount. And I think the EQC has a unique perspective on kind of messages that work for residents. And I've heard that there's some expertise in the room on that. So I'll share those two. I don't know, Ori, if you have any other things to add to that.
A 4.5 million grant from what, for what,
Oh,
sorry?
cool. This is exciting that we get to share it. I can share past staff reports with you for further context, but the CEC awarded the city a $4.5 million $4.5 million grant for a community-wide electrification project by way of Senator Becker's office. And so it's really broad and gives the city a lot of agency to design programs that we think will be effective in electrifying buildings or even vehicles or landscaping equipment in our city. The EQC and the city council both, the EQC recommended working with Peninsula Clean Energy through their home upgrade services program. So supplementing their program with the first half of the funding to electrify 40 to 60 homes in Bellhaven for income qualifying residents. So doing full home electrification if that's what the homeowner is interested in, or doing a simple water heater change out or HVAC change out. We're starting that program in August, and we have kind of a softish launch right now where folks can sign up, but they'll be contacted in August. And that's being administered by PCE's contractor, Franklin Energy. So the city's in contract with PCE's in contract with Franklin. Franklin has a subcontractor, Fuse, who will actually be in people's homes doing the energy assessments and turnkey upgrades.
And then is this, just to remind me, is this, so we got another 2.2, 2.3 to
Yes.
spend? That's about 50%.
2.25, yeah,
2.25.
and we have to spend this by June 2026. So there's urgency. But, or if there's anything you wanted to share to provide context or color to how we would want feedback or priority.
To summarize what you said, you want us to focus on our role as an advisory body that advises on policy and programs. And you suggested a couple, which would be finishing out the work on the scope of work for the CAP. And then also advising on the implementation of the CEC grant, in particular, community outreach and messaging.
Yeah, to clarify on the CAP, it would be implementation of the CAP. So we have a clear list of activities, and it would be getting EQC's guidance and recommendations for next steps on those activities. Or feedback on recommendations that staff make to implement those activities.
To get a sense of how much work that is, Jeff, do you and John, could you explain a little bit about how much of a total work plan those two, that the CAP implementation guidance and the electrification guidance and advisory feel like? Is that 2/3 of what we do? Is it 10% of what we do? If we did it.
If that was 100%. Take a runner.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think 2/3 is, I mean, a lot of our focus is on the climate action.
So if we did these things that Rachel just discussed so helpfully, so thank you, that in terms of a regular annual work plan for us would constitute about 2/3 of what we would accomplish. So that leaves a little bit more room for our efforts, but not 90%. Okay.
You know, I might even bump it up to 75% of the work is around the cap.
Yeah, I agree with John. I feel like we learned a lot from updating the climate action plan and like you saw, Susanna, sometimes we split things into two discussions or we bump it over. And so I think if we spend 90% of our time helping everybody implement the climate action plan, that's a huge achievement. And, I got a couple of pet projects that I'm gonna kind of throw on the list, but I'd say they're not as important as the climate action plan. That's my personal view, so.
And I welcome Commissioner Monroe to have these thoughts too.
Just got.
Not to put her on the spot, but
Raise your hand.
Um, I feel like a lot of the ideas that are listed here can be part of what we do as we think about the implementation of the cap. Like, as I think about, say, for example, a 15-minute city that touches a bunch of different elements, as well as things beyond the EQC's scope, like the EJ element and, the safe streets work that the city's been doing.
And one thing I'd noticed to build on what Commissioner Headley's saying is like this last bullet's a really good example. There's also kind of a spanning and a process function. So sorry, I'm referring to the community education and engagement, right? So there's a sort of a how we get it done as well, which that's always the education and engagement is going to apply to all 6 pieces of the cap. But frankly, it will apply to the 2.25 million too. So I think there's parts of how the work gets done that we don't want to forget. Well, why don't we, for the sake of time, why don't we dive in and see if this process works are there things we want to add? What's a good way to do it? Does everybody have because I'm also conscious that a few of these I want to pull out, not this entire list because it's bigger than I realize, but I would probably pull out a handful of these to send an indicator to city council of what our forward-looking stuff is going to be. So maybe if we could, did anybody see anything missing? Anything we want to add? Keeping in mind, it doesn't necessarily have to make the main work plan. It can go into our secondary bucket. So keep that in mind as well.
And this captures everything on one page.
Okay.
But if there's trouble seeing in the room, we can zoom in.
Collapse little toolbar.
have we begun any of the work on the scope of work implementation guidance?
That might be more a question for staff. I feel like the answer is probably not much. Well, that's not fair because some things are very much in motion. So like some of the transportation stuff is just a continuity. So
on the transportation, for example, not that I know, our guidance or our advice on how to implement would not be needed. I mean, maybe it is, but I'm using it as an example. There's some areas where our advice and guidance would really be needed, and other places where it's pretty well understood and staff are carrying it out.
I think you guys tell us, but I think that's fair.
Yeah, and I think going back to the comment Commissioner Lorica Headley made on priorities 1, 3, and 5, that's correct. That those are the city council's priorities as of the last time they reviewed the cap. And so that would be maybe another guiding post as we prioritize these topics, thinking about 1, 3, and 5. And then also thinking about where there's other commissions and maybe work that's already happened. And if there's other commissions, especially relative to transportation or housing, those topics maybe could be taken on by another commission.
So why don't I get the ball rolling if that's helpful? Because I did have a list that Rachel helpfully advised me to take out of the previous discussion. But and maybe we can just add them and they don't have to make the cut just because they're coming from me. So please take this as just a few of my pet projects, a few of my things that I think might be interesting. So one is sort of what Ms. Lunder alluded to. I think we talked about in the script a little bit. There could be the opportunity for better cross-commission collaboration. So I think most of us have been working in the space well enough to know like transportation is connected to housing, is connected to climate, is connected to, so could we look at as a way of operating similar to you know, how we want to do community education outreach. Could we look at better project integration and planning across city commissions, planning, housing and climate, for example? One new idea I had, and I think some of the other commissions might be open to this, is what if we did an annual cross-commission kind of chair, vice chair meeting to compare notes, priorities, and implementation? We wouldn't necessarily have to all convene in a 50-person meeting. We could potentially implement some new idea to at least pilot this idea that all this work is connected, but we don't really talk across commissions. So I want to throw that out there. The second one I want to throw out there, and I'm not sure where it fits, but I just don't want to lose the importance of what this is going to look like, because I did ironically bring a copy of the city's budget, killed a couple of trees, unfortunately, but there's a deficit, there's a small deficit going into the coming year and a significant and growing deficit probably over a 3 to 5 year period. Statewide, citywide, I don't know how Palo Alto is flush with $1 billion, but we're not, right? So this model that we did with the urban forest of getting a small bit of seed money from the city in the budget, making sure it's a priority, extrapolating that into grants that the city writes or a community coalition could come together to write. I would just love to maybe on the reserve line of how we do things and how we advise. I've been in all the city council meetings for the last 5 months, and basically, you know, new revenue. And we've had some success with that. I think we're gonna continue to look for ways to find outside funding. So I just want to put that forward to us as a commission, because I think we can make recommendations. I mean, heck, we can even recommend grants to city council, and there's a grant writer on staff. So I don't want to lose that thought, but I feel like we could have lots of great plans, and if there's no money in the budget for it, everybody knows how that's going to go.
I would just offer a piece of information supporting Chair Schmidt. Having been on the FAC previous to this, the grant writing is vastly expanded by the fact that the city has engaged a consulting firm that carries through on the grant writing. And so we could feel free to request that they investigate the specific grants on any particular topic. We don't have to do any work on it much at all.
Yeah.
So let us go forward and think of grants we want and push the work.
Yeah, exactly. And then we can, if we combine that with the cross commission work, then it could be a Department of Transportation grant that has climate implications. It could be, you know, it could be multiple departments at the federal and state level. So anyway, I wanted to make sure that was something that we at least got planted in city council's mind, because I think they would appreciate that given the budget outlook in the coming years. Last year, really quick, heritage trees. I think we're going to talk about this a little bit, but I would definitely recommend. We talked about the ordinance not currently being under review, but reviewing and updating the administrative guidelines. That'll come with a citizen feedback period. But I think there's feelings that we're not properly valuing trees relative to their multiple benefits, you know, public health, shade, climate capture, quality of neighborhoods. I forget what the dollar figure is. Habitat, you know, I forget what the dollar figure is, but it's pitifully low to remove a tree. So I would recommend we keep that on the radar front and center, and I think the city's already teed that up. John and I are working, Commissioner McKinnon and I are working with Menlo Park City School District. So this is a little bit of a personal pet thing that doesn't necessarily have to make it as a top priority, but we're working with the superintendent school district to update their climate action plan. Many of you probably know they have a bond coming up in November on the ballot. That's only the first phase. That's for the buildings. That's for a lot of the electrification. The superintendent is committed to a proper climate action plan that mirrors what the city's doing. So, and she's very open to collaboration, getting advice from us. So I would just offer that up as a consideration. I think we can, if we could do that, just like Lynn said about our faith-based community, having a collaborative partnership, which I love that idea. I think schools are also in that bucket. So I'd ask us to consider, you know, maybe putting that on the reserve. And then my final hobby horse thing is, the goal-oriented communication, minimize the technical terms that are unrelatable for the average citizen, like talk less about, greenhouse, like we talked about, talk less about greenhouse gas and talk more about, we have 300 commercial buildings in Menlo Park and 182 are fully electrified. Just keeping it really simple and relatable. And that's more about how we do things and how we talk about metrics. So, okay, so that was so I got the ball rolling. That was my list of my wish list. Commissioner.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll just share the thoughts that I had as I reviewed the information. And I think, I think it's pretty well captured here, that the climate action plan is a big focus for this commission. And I fully endorse that. And more specifically, building electrification. I think there's a role for EQC to play in assisting the city to develop ordinances, building codes that get us closer to our goals. And until the city has some policies in place or programs that are voluntary, whatever is most effective, we're just not going to meet our city's goals when it comes to decarbonizing 95% of our buildings if we keep building buildings with gas infrastructure. So I think that's a really important point that I think the EQC can help with. And going even beyond that is how do we get gas equipment out of existing buildings, which is even more challenging. Frankly, the new construction is pretty low hanging fruit when you think about it compared to existing buildings. So those are two things I think the EQC needs to continue to focus on until there's really the right policies and programs in place for that. And I think we talked about this a little bit already, but just sort of emphasizing outreach and communication. I think if there's ways that the EQC can help staff and the city create more robust outreach to really engage the community and the residents on the urgency of the situation and the solutions that are available and the resources that are out there for people to take advantage of. I think there's a lot of room for improvement there that EQC could help with. And then just the communication of, like we talked about before, just developing some metrics. And there was something in here about the Sustainable San Mateo County dashboard, which I think is a really excellent tool that maybe the city could focus on participating in, and maybe EQC can play a role in helping facilitate that. And then I do think plastics and AstroTurf or artificial grass is a growing problem. And I do think that there could be a role for EQC to play in not only researching the harmful effects of artificial grass, but finding options to use instead of that, and just reducing the use of single-use plastics throughout the city and helping community members do the same. And it's really awesome that the church does events without that. That's great. I will say that a couple other ideas. There are some notes here in the work plan about sort of more diverse representation. And one idea I had was at least a few times a year, we could hold this meeting in the Bellhaven Community Campus, which might invite more folks from that community to participate in person. That was one thought. And then just in terms of representation on the commission itself, I'm wondering if it's possible to possibly offer some sort of a stipend for low-income residents that want to be part of this commission, but are busy doing other things, and going to a commission meeting or participating in the work that's necessary takes away from, the job they have of just putting food on the table and they're earning a living. So maybe something for the city to explore. I'm not even sure if that's possible, but just an idea that popped into my head. Those are my thoughts. And I don't know hopefully those are relevant to what we're talking about here, but.
Just a quick one, I want to echo what Commissioner McKinnon said, is often the Bellhaven CCCT meeting run by climate resilient communities is the same week. Some of us sort of go to those, usually it's the day after, and we try to echo what was covered in EQC. This one happened to be Monday, just because of the EJ element last night. But I personally love the idea of doing it at the Bellhaven Community Center. That the study session last night was done there for the EJ element, and I think that went really well. So city council would be pretty excited to hear that. Love the idea of stipends as well, if we can figure that out. But in the absence of more people showing up and attending, how do we take what we're doing as an EQC and find a way to bring it to people as opposed to making them come to us? I'm realizing that through various other activities that I'm doing is like, it's very hard to get people to come, but to go to them and talk to them. And I'm not suggesting we're knocking on doors, but I think we just need to find ways to go to people. So. Yes, please, Mr. Headley.
Thank you. I'm really appreciating this discussion and the work that's gone into this proposal here. So as I think about the climate action plan and the previous priorities to focus on 1, 3, and 5, there's obviously still work to do around CAP 1. The city's been making huge progress on CAP 5. I wonder if part of how we focus for the climate action plan, I wonder if it's something like shifting to priorities 1 and 6. And maybe still CAP 5 if there's still a lot of work to do there for city staff, like maybe shifting away from 3 and going to 6 instead, because that includes the community resilience and the immediate impact as well as the long-term impact. So that might be something that we, if we agree, we could talk about at a high level in the July update that our chair will give. And as I'm thinking about our top priorities, I also agree on reviewing the administrative guidelines for the urban forest management plan or the heritage tree ordinance. And then number 4 in the other bucket, I think the single-use plastics and AstroTurf is a really big thing that we could kind of put under priority number 4. I'd love to see us do some research there and make some recommendations on single-use plastics and AstroTurf. And maybe I also just want to echo a couple of the things that were said in terms of the San Mateo County dashboard. Like, that is such a great resource. I would love to see us leverage that because we've been asking for metrics and they're out in front. So if we can get on board and just leverage that data, that would be great for everyone in the community. And yes, to working on the $4.5 million grant, which to me is part of both CAP 1 and CAP 6. Yeah. Okay, that's what I have to say. Thank you.
So why don't we check really quick, just to, because I think Nancy moved us a little bit, the prioritization, which is good, but before we go fully there, any other additions from Commissioner Hill or Meyer? Any other things that this feels like it's lacking for city staff? Any other things we should add?
The notion of focusing on CAP 1 and CAP 6 resonates for me coming new to the council commission because the opportunities for knock-on effects from CAP 1 are so great. In particular, the reviewing opportunities for distributed energy resources. So within CAP 1, there's the programs for encouraging electrification, there's the codes, and there's grant funding. I want to make sure we don't forget that distributed energy resources are very good. In particular, Lynn's mention of solar. Obviously, electrification requires electricity, and that's always a good thing. And secondly, on number 6, if we're going to be holding meetings at the Bellhaven Community Center and discussing how we are going to engage with that community and even bringing people on. I do believe that the most important issue to that population is cap 6. I also believe cap 6 represents an enormous fiscal risk to the city. I think if I read in our climate action plan that $1 billion worth of real estate will be underwater in approximate number of years. And so exploring the ways that we will adapt. Is it forced relocation? I recall a conversation that I had with you, Jeff, when you were onboarding me. So in any event, to recap, I support Commissioner Laurel Headley in focusing on cap 1 and cap 6. And I am thinking that I'm wondering about wastewater. Not that I want to jump on it. It seems to me everybody's pretty comfortable with not jumping on it. I just quickly need a clarifying question on the water management, pollution prevention, and wastewater being less of a priority. Is that because we figure that, you know, staff who are in charge of making sure we have clean water are pretty well on top of it? That's probably it, right?
I'm curious where you see wastewater. So waste management and pollution prevention is thinking about like littering and single-use plastics, things that flow to bay through our storm drains. And then water conservation, reducing our water. We have our utility that has some programs around that. We also have Cal Water in the city. And then stormwater really should move up to pollution prevention because it's stormwater pollution prevention. And so things like the concepts of a sponge city or landscaping support, preventing stormwater pollution prevention and runoff, as our landscape is able to absorb rainwater rather than traveling through our streets, picking up oil and going down the street, among other co-benefits.
Lovely. Thank you.
Yeah. So
Clarifying and explaining. Thank you.
so we'll move that one. We can reconfigure what that looks like. I think you made a great point on that.
It could be that it's not something that particularly requires our advice or policy work, that these things are pretty well understood by staff and they're cranking along and doing a good job making sure that we're not polluting the bay and we have clean water to drink. So I'm feeling satisfied and happy. I just wanted to ask.
One thing though, I think because I have spent way too much time diving into some of the details on pieces of cap 6, and you know, we'll have some really good partners that are able to offer perspectives and guidance. So San Francisco Estuary Institute, for example, they've come to Bellhaven a couple of times. They've talked about what you were saying about, you know, if we don't do anything, then this is not going to look good for a significant part of our community. So I think the nice thing about cap 6 is it's risky, but there are a lot of people who can kind of partner with us on those pieces. The other thing, so I suggest maybe we move to prioritization because it sounds like we're gravitating toward 1 and 6, building electrification and adaptation and resilience being 6. Yes, please. Yeah.
I agree with the idea of rearranging the goals in terms of the 1, 3, 5. 5, I think, as I've said before, is like we're making the most progress there, and the city's doing an awesome job of decarbonizing their infrastructure and their facilities. And 6 is super important. And as 1, I am hesitant to like drop something related to transportation because it's 50% of our emissions. And I think that it needs to remain in some form like a focus. I could even see like the VMT goal being kind of one of those cross-sectional commission things because it relates to planning and how you're laying out the city and the streets are safe. And so I could see VMT sort of being part of the cross-commission concept if we get that put together. But I'm reluctant to drop 3 just because I think EV charging is probably the biggest barrier to people adopting electric vehicles. So I just like to have a further discussion on that.
Go ahead.
How narrow do we like the subcommittees? Like, can we just say like we want to cap 1 like implementation subcommittee instead of just like looking at like taking a comb and taking stuff out of it? Like just look at like how do we implement the stuff in Cap One, or is that like
Come
two?
to staff and get what's the most helpful for you, because I know that there's continuity in almost all these. And if there's not continuity, there's been a lot of work like Cap 6, there's not much continuity, but there's a lot of detail that's being fleshed out, so. Please tell me if I'm wrong, but I would assume that we would want both of your guidance on the formation of a subcommittee, what's the most useful scope of work.
Do you want to share anything?
Yeah, and again, just part of the effort that we went through last year was understanding a little bit more about the rules of the ad hoc subcommittees. So they do need to have a discrete purpose and they have to have a discrete timeline. And so with that, we're a little bit limited in how broad we can make them, but y'all can make them. But you can kind of keep them within a theme and potentially open and close them.
Cool. One, Nancy, I just want to build on something John said, because I was headed in the same direction then come to you. I wasn't quite sure about 1 and 6 being priorities as well, but now that we're talking about it, and I'd love to get city staff's reaction to this. I'm looking at this as where can we as an advisory group to city staff add value versus, to John's point, the fossil fuels out of city ops, that feels well in hand. I don't think we're adding too much good advice. We're just kind of a checkpoint. And I would argue that maybe with number 2, which is electric vehicle adoption and electric vehicle charging, we kind of made the recommendation to turn that over to a set of partners and vendors and have a more collaborative model. The adoption, there's plenty of people working on how to get more people to purchase EVs. We don't really need to do much more as a commission except find those partners and get them engaged. I'd argue we might be in a similar situation with electric vehicle charging. Our advice was like, find good partners, get their programs into the city. So it almost feels like we could turn it over to city staff and say, please go forth and find that. And once you do that, come back to us with, here's the partners, here's the program. So we don't need to provide much more upfront advice. And I'd almost think the reduce the vehicle miles traveled, that feels like the fuzziest still of all the goals. But we could combine 4 maybe in that. So city staff could kind of go off, think about the guidance we've already given and come back and go like, this is what we think the next 5 years is going to look like without a lot more input from us. 1 and 6, I think, would still benefit from more input from us. 1 on how to spend the 2.2, 2.25, and 2, how to define 6. So I'm just trying to bucket it into where would city staff have more value in hearing our input early versus input we've already given on the scope of work. But I love both of your reaction to that, if that makes sense, actually.
Commissioner.
Yeah.
You can, I would love to hear staff's feedback on what you just shared too.
Yeah, and then we'll come to you, Nancy, right after that, if that's okay, because I want to zero in on if 1 and 6 make sense. But yeah, that like, it feels like some of the other ones, you just don't need much more upfront advice from us because we kind of gave a lot of that through previous subcommittees and other work. All right.
Yeah, I think you characterized it correctly. I think checkpoint might have been a little harsh of a word, but we'll that would slide. It's valuable on all our programs, but we would kind of know when to sequence that and we could probably figure out a way to agendize it and in real time. The other piece too is the city council made the climate action priority more expansive this year. So climate action and adaptation and resiliency. So Cap 6 is really reflected in their priorities. And so, yes, would love to see more items related to that and recommendations related to that and work done through the EQC. During the EJ Element meeting last night, there were a lot of great ideas given for how staff and commissions can start implementing stuff immediately. Or I don't know if you have anything to add.
Just that I think a lot of the value that we've seen is in that engagement and serving as like kind of the hub and spoken out into your different networks on different things. And so even if you're not as a commission focused on 3, right, there's a lot of opportunity to continue to do that outreach and engagement on behalf of increasing EV charging in multifamily. And so I would, just encourage you to continue to consider that as an opportunity, and one that can kind of dovetail with some of the other things that you've been working on. But go.
So I like that, because it sounds like what we're gravitating toward, and we'll come to Nancy, is, for 2, 3, and 5, no, sorry, 2, 3, and 4, that's transportation, and we'll turn it over to you guys to sort of carry us to a point. We'll stay very involved on outreach and engagement as we decide on what set of programs are going to advance those goals. But as far as like upfront input, we don't need to spend a ton of time in the first part of this session, in the work plan. We don't need to give you a lot more upfront advice, but we'll stay involved on the outreach and engagement piece, and obviously giving you feedback as you go things forward. So I think we ended up, okay, well, that's.
I have a question about that.
Please, yep.
Well, related to Commissioner Meyer's comment about CAP 4 in the VMT, I wonder if the priority ends up being 1, 4, and 6. Because I think there could be some very interesting work to do around number 4 and partnering with other commissions like Complete Streets and Planning and who knows, maybe even, the Parks and Rec Commission. And the idea of the 15-minute city, I think, fits in nicely with reducing vehicle miles traveled. So my proposal would be we focus on CAP 1, 4, and 6. And even as part of that, I think that Heritage Tree Ordinance admin guidelines could be part of CAP 6 and resilience, which is potentially an interesting connect. Yeah, and then do the something around single-use plastics and AstroTurf, which is, I'm sure, could be connected to one of our climate action plans, but for me, it more feels like an immediate connection to our 4th overall priority, which was kind of that other catch-all bucket. So I guess I'm curious what other people think about CAP 4.
Yeah.
Continuing to be here. And I know it doesn't include Commissioner McKenna's comment about number 2 and 3. So I'd love to hear others' thoughts.
I'm just gonna go there too, and I'd say maybe with the caveat of 4 being that we do it in partnership with other commission. We're not, as a, EQC, trying to build a 15-minute city on our, right? Like, it's a little bit absurd, but I think, making sure that whatever we're thinking about is connected to housing, is connected to police streets, et cetera.
I guess I'd like to hear staff's input on this idea of commissions collaborating. Like, is that allowed, like from a Brown Act perspective, or has that happened in other cities? And how, like, if we were really excited about that concept, is it something that how do you see that coming together?
I don't have historical information if it's happened before. I think maybe we've had joint meetings before, and that's pretty common where the planning commission, city council put joint study session or something. As far as kind of looking forward and how we would approach it, it would be something we need to socialize with our clerk's office. As far as Brown Act, I mean, I don't think there would be an issue necessarily. It would depend kind of on the nature of the item. I would assume if there's a recommendation being made.
Takes action on it.
Yeah, they take action. So maybe it's just like if, like a meet and greet or something. I think it would be very staff intensive. Each of these commissions has their own staff liaison. And so I don't know if it would be in the city council's interest or in the city manager's interest to allocate staff time for that level of coordination from an admin burden perspective. And so I don't know what that would look like yet with the clerk, but if the EQC is interested, then we can start that conversation. I know in the past, like commissioners will attend other commission meetings and share public comment. And that might be a first step, might be a longer conversation.
But maybe, I think that's worth investigating only because, I'm looking at Lynn and she has this great idea of like, these plans need to integrate over time, you know, our long range planning tends to be too siloed, and I'm a big believer in that. And the challenge with that is, of course, you know, we end up having too many plans and not enough implementation, and there's wasted effort. Not from you guys, to be clear, but be nicer to have more integration. And I think you're right, Rachel. I think the upfront investment to get that might be a little heavier, but in the end, it might be lighter. But maybe we can just investigate how that might look.
And I think the other commissions too would need to make a decision on it as well. So that may be just another part of the process to consider. A good time to kind of plug into other commissions' work is in this work plan effort. So when they all go to city council on September 24th, that's a natural point to kind of review and see what they're prioritizing, as well as attending their presentations over the next few months.
Maybe what we could do just as by way of moving this forward, because I think I'm really warming up to the idea of 1, 4, and 6 as well, is we figure out maybe offline what the true scope of that might start to look like and which commissions. Like I don't think it's gonna be Parks and Rec. I think it's gonna be planning, complete streets, housing, but that's just my top of mind guess. You know, probably not. You know, the libraries are nice, but like it's too much, it's just too much in the weeds, right? It's sort of what are the 3 big commissions and maybe could we pilot it in year 1. So if everybody's okay with that, maybe we take that as a to be finalized once we know, to John's point about, is it possible, is it doable? Would Justin even say yes? You know, does that sound okay? It's
Yeah.
kind of got a caveat. How does everybody feel about that? Are we coming to this concept of we want to prioritize cap around 1, 4, and 6, 4 with the potential for cross commission collaboration with a pretty big caveat of demands on staff time, permission from city manager, et cetera, et cetera. And then that gives us about a month to research how we would do that. With the goal of using it as a pilot potentially for future collaboration.
So, walk me back through why we need permission of the city manager.
Well, I think, I don't want to speak for you, Rachel, but I think it's, each commission has its own process, its own staff liaison, its own time of meeting, like as you well know as a previous commissioner. So to get commissioners together, like, where do we meet? Who do we meet? What do we take off the calendar? Who's gonna run it? I mean, it sounds silly to say it out loud, but would it be Rachel running it, or would it be, you know, the housing liaison running it? So like, there's just detail there. And then are we getting enough benefit from removing one valuable meeting from both of our calendars to come up with a joined up meeting? I think we're assuming the answer to that is yes, but
This idea is exciting. I wonder about alternatives that would not put demand on Justin and his team, for instance. In the same way that the city council has a liaison to each commission, we might have liaisons to the other commissions. And it would allow, as the work plans are done, for one of us to raise our hand and say, I wonder if you would consider pointing this one piece in this one direction so that we overlap. And it may even be that it goes, when we present to the city council our work plan, that we asterisk that this particular piece is something we intend to coordinate with Housing and Complete Streets on, and that we would need direction from staff and the council on how to do it. Because if we want it done, then I don't think there's a question, and there needs to be some level of coordination. It's just a matter of how.
yeah, I think that makes sense.
I like that idea, because we can just go to different public comments and or different meetings and make public comments.
We definitely
I'm a
can.
little worried.
And
about-
then report back.
I'm a little worried about the public comment though, only because it's tougher, but maybe building on that, but taking a different direction. Also, I seem to go to a study session every other week now, so like maybe it's a study session. I don't know, Nancy's got her hand up, but I think it doesn't have to be like a formal meeting. It definitely has to be public because of Brown Act, but I don't think it has to be a formal, like, let's combine agendized meetings, but maybe we can do a study session.
And we could even have in the end, when we have announcements, each of us would have an announcement. I sat in on Complete Streets.
Yeah.
Here's a couple of things they're prioritizing. Do we want to add that to our subcommittee?
Which we could do today.
We
To your-
could just
to your
do some
point.
little bits of blocking and tackling that would coordinate without.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, maybe use that as part of the investigation of, as a baseline. I think Suzanne's, we can do that today.
That's.
But maybe if we could look at like, would a study session be possible? I'm sorry, I'm not ignoring you, Commissioner Hadley, please go ahead. Oh, or not?
You don't have to let me speak as soon as I raise my hand. It's all good.
You can jump in.
I'm appreciating what Commissioner Hill is saying about the things we can do now without having to put any burden on staff time, which is a limited resource. Because we've been, for a few months now, trying to get some joint meetings and they just haven't happened. And I'm assuming because of the complications logistically. So I love the idea of, us kind of branching out and, being a bit more active with the other subcommittee or the other commissions. But my main question, and the other thing that I'm thinking about with regard to your July presentation to City Council, just reiterating what Commissioner Hill said, like if we want City Council to direct staff to do something, that would be an ideal time. So if we think it's really important to do the coordination across commissions, we don't want to miss that opportunity. But we could also decide too heavy on staff. Let's do something, based, not do that. But I think we should decide on that, whether or not that's something we want to ask before we wrap up this meeting. So that's one thing.
Sorry, oh yeah, carry on, sorry, yeah.
Well, and the other thing is, I guess I'm wondering, it does seem like we're kind of coalescing around like 1, 4, and 6. And I'm wondering with the other recommendations that Rachel had been bulleting there, if they all kind of fall under. So if we're thinking about grant opportunities, can they be related to 1, 4, and 6, et cetera? And that can just like kind of overall organize how we, boil the ocean, if you will.
Yeah, I appreciate the point you made about making sure that we address what Rachel and Ori wanted us to consider when we asked them to tell us. And so it does look as though the CEC grant is something that would clearly fall into cap 1. But
it's kind of both, kind of 1 and 6, which is, I feel like in a
Ooh.
constrained time and money place, if it can hit two birds with 1 stone, like let's do it.
Awesome. And then I think that sustainability manager, Rachel, I blanked on your last name.
Oh, London.
Thank you, jeepers, I see it every day. That Manager London's idea that or request that we focus on providing advice on the programs that staff could use our advice on, then that would ideally fall under 1, 4, and 6. But if there are things that else than that we would just tag that on.
And some of those items are reflected in the calendar already, such as the ZELI, the Zero Emission Landscape Equipment Voucher Program. That's something we're anticipating we'll want advice on. We have put that under cap 6 as part of air quality. So that's a way to organize ourselves, and that, as well as the annual city arborist report. That's an annual interest for city staff to get feedback we see on that topic. So some of those are big things.
But I think that could be really helpful because that's the page in the deck from before about sort of like the other topics. So what Commissioner Hill is saying is, yeah, when city staff needs advice, we'll just drop it in the calendar, because we, as chair and vice chair, we meet every month to decide the agenda, and sometimes things just parachute in. Ori will call us and, or will chime in and say, oh, we really need advice on X and Y, and then we'll move the agenda around, so. I feel like we got that, like, so let me recap where I think we are. And I want to put a finer point on something Nancy was saying is, so it sounds like we're prioritizing 1, 4, and 6. We'll indicate that to city council. I think we'll indicate to them that we would like them to direct city staff to what I will call really specifically explore our options around cross commission collaboration without committing us to doing it. And I know I sound like I'm being wishy-washy there, but if our options are all super time intensive and not useful and everything else, then we want the ability to back away from that idea, if that makes sense. So I think we're pre-agreeing what we would like the city staff to ask you both to do, which feels weird. But yeah, just what are our options? And then just come back and tell us what those are. And then as a commission, we could decide with both of your guidance. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, we can do.
Because I don't think we just know what our options are. That's really what we're kind of getting at.
Yeah, we can research that with the clerk's office.
Hopefully that's 30 minutes with Judy and we'll have one and done, and
Menu of options, lightweight to heavyweight.
yeah, exactly.
Question
and
for that.
just- oh, go for it.
Rachel, would it be supportive for you to have city council provide direction to city staff on that topic? Or do you feel like you can just take it and figure it out and come back to us?
The second one.
Okay, so we don't need to put it in the July update.
Well, I think we want to indicate the future direction. So, whether city council says go forth and do it, or whether city staff just does it, I think it's still the same outcome, right? So I do think I would prefer to send a signal that, because some other commissions might need a little bit of a nudge. So I would definitely want to send a signal to city council that we advocate for exploring moving in this direction.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Level it a little bit, but in our judgment as a commission, meaningful action on number 4 and all of them won't be accomplished without activity that is decided between the commission. So we need a way to do it. It's sort of existential to our work plan.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and the city.
that makes sense. Okay, but it's just to be very specific, it's an update. We're not asking them to provide specific direction on that. And I think that feels good to me, as long as it does to others.
Yeah, I don't think that's part of the question. I'm going back and looking at the questions that we asked them, but I don't think we go into that level of detail. In the general question of, do you have any feedback for the EQC?
Yeah, great.
Like some of them might kind of wander off into that wilderness, but that's totally fine.
Great.
Because
All right.
it'll still be the same outcome, which is you guys are gonna check it out and come back to us. Cool. So the last part of just to kind of keep us on the train on the tracks a little bit, I feel like we did the prioritization. I think we all feel okay about that. We could still walk that back a little bit if we need to. But if we do 1, 4, and 6 with the caveat of potential cross commission collaboration, are there pieces of 1, 4, and 6 that we want to start plugging into the month by month? Could we? Well, I know for the last work plan, we did it by cap. We did like 1 was in May and 4 was in June. And do we want to do it that way, or sorry, I'm looking at Rachel and Nori. What's the most useful way to take 1, 4, and 6 and kind of plug it in?
And does it also depend on how long it will take us or a subcommittee to come up with something meaningful?
Oh, that's a great point. Do we need to talk about forming subcommittees around those first, and then subcommittee is the calendaring?
in the subcommittee, maybe the first job of each subcommittee is to determine the amount of work that needs to be done or how much lead time before it comes on the agenda. Scope it out. And then we can order the agenda. We can identify what we want on the agenda, but which month it lands in, if there's a question, each subcommittee would scope it out.
Let me turn that back on its head and see if, because I hadn't thought about what you just said, but so that would give us one existing subcommittee, which is cap one. It would give us two new subcommittees plus an extra, because next on the agenda, we're going to talk about urban forest and canopy. So what we would, I think every other subcommittee is closed except for one. Is that correct? What-
Yes, the only one that's open is the one that's presenting this item.
Oh, sorry, the work plan one, but but did we close the building decarbonization
Yes.
subcommittee? Okay, so we need to reopen that back up. So are we saying that? Are we saying that 1, 4, and 6 would need new subcommittees to come with recommendations? Or,
I think so, and we might even have it be more detailed than 1, 4, and 6, because there's a lot under each of those buckets that we could potentially work on.
okay, that's good. So I think what we're saying as a group is, so moving into this cycle, we'll actually have 4 new subcommittees. At least one associated with one associated with 4, one associated with 6. And then the 4th is later on the agenda, the urban forest. So everybody feel okay about that?
I was thinking there'd be a subcommittee on artificial grass and plastics.
I support that as well.
Could we, sorry, I think you're going exactly where I'm going.
I was gonna say, could that be part of what's going on in the subcommittee of 6, and that subcommittee splits into whatever action areas they need to address?
I don't see it
No.
falling under 6. That's just me.
Well, air pollution falls under 6.
It does, but I'm trying to think of turf and
Can I
plastics.
insert? So we have moving beyond the cap, higher level than the cap, our very top priorities. We have the cap, the urban forest. Can you actually scroll back up to what those are? Oh, there it is. Resilience and, wait, no, you were just there. Can you scroll down, Rebecca? Or sorry, not Rebecca, Rachel. There we go. Commission priorities. So for cap, we have 1, 4, and 6. Number 2, that bullet there, climate resilience and adaptation, is 6, obviously. But then we have urban canopy, which is looking at the ordinance around the heritage trees. And then I think the plastic and AstroTurf could fall under that 4th bullet there. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, well, like caps 1, 4, and 6 are the things we want to focus on with regard to the climate action plan. There's these other elements regarding environment overall that we also don't want to miss.
Yeah, that makes sense. So with that, sorry, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I think that makes sense about putting that in priority bucket 4. I would assume that would be a relatively short time frame. Like it could be a month or 2 or whatever. It doesn't have to be one of these that's a bit longer. So maybe then what we're saying is we'll have a shorter term turf and not recycling, single-use plastics that'll be shorter term. There'll be,
and that could be separate from AstroTurf. So we could do single-use plastics as one, AstroTurf as another, and they don't even have to start all right now.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, but we would categorize that under our catch-all category. To your point, Nancy, it would be a priority number 4. Okay.
Yeah.
And I would share whatever ones we can capture on this document, we can form in one fell swoop. So each meeting, we don't have to have the admin process of forming them.
Okay.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Quick clarifying question. I understand the role of this commission in the caps. I'm not quite clear on the role of this commission in addressing the one-use plastics in the turf. Would somebody give me the 30-second on the output of our subcommittee on that topic?
Yeah, I think for the Environmental Quality Commission, plastics are a huge problem for our environment, and what can our city council do to address that problem? EQC could lay out the issues, do the research, and then come back to the EQC with recommendations, which could then go to the council. Could be a ban on artificial grass. It could be programs needed to reduce single plastic use. I mean, that's kind of the way I see it
Okay,
coming together and what the end result would be.
thank you for explaining. I'm actually fuzzy on that.
Commissioner McKenna, would you like to see these two in one subcommittee, or are you okay if it is two different subcommittees?
Yeah, I don't have a preference. I actually kind of thought the artificial grass would be its own. So I
Okay.
could find separate from the two.
I feel like it would be easier because I think they are potentially significant areas to research. It would be nice if each committee or subcommittee had a clear focus.
I think there's
Okay.
gonna be different research and solutions for those two different problems.
So here's a thought, because I think this is getting crisper. My sense is that Cap One, maybe we could and should do that earlier in the calendar, because there's more consistency there. There's already been a subcommittee. Not that we could knock it out quicker. It's also going to have the lead up to the spending of the remaining money. So I'm not thinking of exactly what the specific is, but I'd say calendaring wise, Cap One feels like we might be able to cover those topics earlier in the calendar because we've done a lot of work already. Cap 4 and Cap 6 feel like we've got a lot more ground to plow before we could actually cover them in detail. So I don't know how everybody feels about that, but I'm just trying to think of how to, would August be too soon to, have the committee reform and come up with some initial recommendations, for example?
I guess I'm just thinking about Cap One and what the building decarbonization subcommittee already presented, which hasn't even gone to the council yet. So does it make sense to have a subcommittee again? I think we probably want to hold off on that and maybe see the results of the study session with council and the direction that the city's going to go on buildings and ordinances. And then maybe there's a need for a subcommittee, but
Sure. When's that going in front of council? Do we know?
September,
The cap,
the study session on
oh,
codes.
that's gonna be in September. Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot in that with just things, other things the city can do that I don't know if we want to dig deeper on one of those topics or just kind of let that recommendation take its hold and see what happens.
and irregardless, the city council in August at their last meeting of that month will be reviewing the cap scope of work update, so we'll have direction from them on where to take the Cap One activities. So I think September or October is a good time.
All right, so given that, because we have made all of these recommendations, not only about Cap One, but actually about all of them, I wonder if we just need to wait on those and focus on the things that are new, like the heritage tree ordinance, admin guidelines, either new or things that are already in flight, because we could form a subcommittee around the $4.5 million and, figure out what that group needs to do to support the launch and successful deployment of those resources. And we could have the AstroTurf piece and the single-use plastic piece, because we haven't really talked about either of those in great detail. How does that feel?
It might be interesting for both of those subcommittees to form now and both present together, like in September or something. October.
I think we can only form the urban forest one now, because it's on the agenda. We can,
Oh,
We could recommend agendizing
yeah,
the subcommittee. All right.
And then as far as the admin guidelines, yes, I agree. In July, they will be published from our arborist. And so that's why we want to form the subcommittee today. So when they're published, the subcommittee's already had time to think about what sort of feedback or elements they'd like to see in the guidelines. And then when the arborist gives her presentation in July, feedback can be shared at that meeting and then 30 days after that meeting. So it's advantageous to have the subcommittee formed today, but we'll get to that item. And then in August, there may be some additional follow-up of it. EQC might want to more formally share feedback, but admin guidelines after having the chance to meet with arbors. July.
So I think I'm also just figuring out like, what's the very practical thing we can cover in August? Because I take John's point about like, it's too early. I assume because we've done so much work, we could be ready for an update, but if it doesn't correspond with city council giving us feedback, then I'm almost thinking very practically, what do we cover in August? What do we cover in September?
One idea is Sustainable San Mateo County proactively reached out, and they shared that they're very interested in delivering a presentation, so they're ready. And I know metrics have been talked to, so we could hear from them.
Sounds good to me too. Everybody feel okay about that?
Yeah, that'd be really interesting. I think Sustainable San Mateo County might be of great interest to the Complete Streets Commission. We could issue an invitation.
Certainly. Okay, so going back to these items and just recognizing the time, I don't know if there's an interest to break or anything like that, but I'll leave space for that. But we have some priorities here, and the subcommittee could start kind of categorizing these and reorganizing them based on the feedback today, and start putting them into the work plan and come back with a draft schedule, and you guys would have something to react to. That may be a little easier to think through than all these notes.
I'm sorry, who would be organizing it?
Commissioner Meyer,
Oh.
Leader Yocart, and Kissel.
The work plan sub.
Yes.
I think that's great, gives them a lot of input, and then they can work their magic with come up with a plan that we can review.
So are we suggesting we hold off on building the calendar until we get that piece done?
I think just looking at the time, that's where I was going, but
That makes
Yeah.
sense to me to, if I would ask Commissioner Meyer, like, do you have what you need to recommend plugging things in? And then we can review that couple of pages in the July meeting.
Yeah, I think our discussion today was great, and I think bringing it back to the subcommittee also allows the two commissioners who aren't here today to kind of look through the feedback today.
Great. That
And
seems
then-
like a great way to go.
and we can do our homework too on the commission piece. So that's a big part of it. I think what will drive this work plan.
Oh, and the
Cross collaborative.
The only other thing I wanted to make sure we don't forget, and if on the calendar is, when do we need to form? So we can't form the other subcommissions now because they're not agendized, but should we do that in July as well?
We can if they're part of this work plan. Or if you're not gonna adopt this work plan in July, if you're gonna wait till August, then you could adopt it then. Or we could agendize it separately.
Sorry, I think the copy wasn't strong enough. I should like go backwards. So we need to document that subcommittee formation is part of the work plan, and Zach and team will go back and figure that out. And then there's a good chance that we can agendize and approve that in
Yes.
July, as long as it's sort of written down here
Yes.
somewhere. Okay.
And we can always form a mid-year, it's just anytime.
But for, like, we have to decide tonight on what the exact subcommittees will be so that we can form them in July. We can't talk about them in July at that meeting.
You could,
Okay, I would recommend we just have a discussion in July about subcommittees and decide as a commission which ones we want to form, what their specific role is and outcome is and deliverable.
so maybe the agenda line item would be approve the work plan and subcommittees
In August.
in July.
Or maybe approve the work plan and identify subcommittees to form to support the work plan.
Excellent.
Identify
And
and
then
create, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great.
And then in August, we would have more of a meatier subcommittee discussion, it sounds like in August.
No, July.
Yeah, I think
July
July.
Okay, well, you guys could.
If in July, the draft set, work plan and subcommittee list doesn't feel fully baked and you need more time, we have up until August.
Okay.
So you could send the ad hoc subcommittee back to work. Revisit in August to approve.
So I think we're most of the way, so we talked about additions, we prioritized, we got someone on the calendar. And then the subcommittee will refine. So those were the 4 steps we said we would do with this agenda item. Did we miss anything? Does everybody feel like we're well on the way to getting this thing done?
Yeah, I appreciate the discussion today. I wanted to add on the Bellhaven Community Center hosting meetings there, that I was able to socialize with the clerk. And we're working with all of the commissions and understanding what the schedule over there looks like. And they're still kind of figuring out their room reservation and commitments to their own programs and classes. So hopefully in the next few months, we'll know what it looks like. There's still some IT that needs to happen. But everyone's excited about it. We're just figuring out the finer details. So thank you.
You had already looked into that?
Yes,
Oh, cool.
it came from a commissioner.
Oh,
So one last small thing, if everybody's okay with this, and let me just, please tear this apart. So just to go back and revisit the looking forward EQC plans, I think if we're okay with these, I'll capture 4. One is CAP focused scope of work and plans with subcommittees. The second one is we're exploring a cross collaboration model with other committees. The third, actually, I'd like, if everybody's okay, just adding this in, is the idea of hosting in the Bellhaven Community Center and just the bringing it to more folks concept. And if they push me on that, we can say we're exploring it, but we love what you did last month and, we think it's a good model, so I won't go into a lot of specificity there. And then the fourth thing is around metrics and how we communicate those metrics. So that's because I think the forward-looking plans is more this is what we're envisioning versus specific commitments. Does that feel okay to everybody, or did I forget anything, or is there any other?
Well said.
We can connect on it, I think.
Oh, we might need to add the heritage tree to that as well. Okay, I'll add heritage tree, sorry, because we are actually doing that, so.
for clarification on the notes I saw, the idea of a stipend for commissioners. My idea wasn't for any commissioner, all commissioners, it's for more low income. Okay.
You have a metric for like the same we're using for the PCE program, 80% of area median income.
I didn't have a concept in mind. You often hear that low income folks always have to prove they're low income. I don't want to put an extra burden on folks to show they qualify for that stipend. I just wanted to encourage a more diverse commission.
We could set the bar quite casually and low, the self-attestation.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't, it's all what the city council says it is.
Okay, that's something we'll bring to the clerk at the same time as the cross collaboration. Thank you.
So I think we do need to form a motion on this one, right? Well, I've got it listed in my notes that we form a motion. But do we need to, or?
Doesn't hurt.
Yeah, you could, form a motion. I know we don't have to revisit this conversation to form a new motion next time.
Maybe, so I'll start the ball rolling, but something about, the motion is to ask the existing subcommittee to carry forward our recommendations, consider those, and then come back next month with a first draft of calendared items and clear first step of the work plan. Simple.
And some subcommittees.
Was there something from you, Commissioner Headley?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about being a bit more specific, like take our feedback in terms of focus on caps 1, 4, and 6, single-use plastics, AstroTurf, the Heritage Tree Ordinance, admin guidelines. And recommended subcommittees associated with each. So I guess that's my friendly amendment to your motion, Chair
Good.
Schmidt.
Well, I made a motion yet. We need to wordsmith it first, right? But
Yeah.
Can we change AstroTurf to artificial grass?
Yeah. And then the Heritage Tree Ordinance Administrative Guidelines.
And then the second piece around the formation of the subcommittees,
Yeah.
what was that language again?
Let's see. So to make recommendations.
I would say. On my turn.
And is it really, it's more recommendations around when we talk about all these things?
Yeah.
And recommend associated ad hoc subcommittees to support these discussions.
We say recommend and form.
Recommend associated.
well, the subcommittee can't form them. We'll have to form them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah.
And do we want to say the ad hoc subcommittee works with staff to make recommendations, or is that implied?
That's implied right here.
Okay. So as our one speaking member of the subcommittee, how does that feel?
Sounds good. Well, work.
Should we say
Thank
to complete a draft of the work plan, just so it doesn't feel like they have to pay it themselves?
Sounds good.
So are you making that motion?
I'm happy for somebody else to make it. I just wanted to start wordsmithing it, so. But I'm fine to make the motion.
Do you want to read it?
Go ahead.
Do we need another motion to say that we're going to form subcommittees in July or?
No, that's okay.
Okay.
I'm not sure how to read it. So I guess I'm making a motion to recommend that the work plan ad hoc subcommittee make some recommendations around when to agendize cap 1, 4, and 6, plus artificial grass, single-use plastics, and heritage tree ordinance, admin guidelines, to complete a draft of the work plan and recommend associated ad hoc subcommittees to support these items. So that's the motion as written.
Anyone second?
I'll second.
And so we'll do roll call vote. So motion to recommend that the work plan ad hoc subcommittee, as you can see on the screen, will come back with a draft work plan that incorporates cap 1, 4, 6, artificial grass, single-use plastics, and the heritage tree ordinance. And we'll recommend associated ad hoc subcommittees. By roll call vote, we'll start in the room. Commissioner Hill.
Aye.
Vice Chair McKenna,
Yes.
Chair Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Meyer,
Yes.
and online, Commissioner Headley,
Yes.
and then Commissioner Kissel, absent. Commissioner Pellegrini, Yopart, absent. So moved. Thank you.
Excellent. So quick question. we've got one more agenda item around forming the committee and then reports and announcements. How's everyone feel? Do we want to push through? Do we want to take a quick bio break? I want to read the room.
Push this.
Okay. Yeah, all right, great. So, Nancy, all right? Yep, good. All right, great. So, thanks for that. That's exciting, actually. So agenda item D4, where we're going to talk about creating and selecting members for an urban forest and canopy ad hoc subcommittee. I'm not sure, if we already defined the scope of that we want to present to people, or are we going to? I have a question here. What would this group do? So do we already have a proposal for that, or do we want to discuss it as a group?
Yeah, Commissioner Headley, would you feel comfortable sharing your vision for that one?
Sure. So it's my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Rachel, that city staff is going to be, like Jillian and team are going to be recommending updates to the administrative guidelines for the heritage tree ordinance. And it would be nice if there were a couple of us who could meet and talk through that before they present it to us in July.
That's great.
Okay. Yeah, just to do some pre-thinking, pre-processing before we can give feedback to them in July. So it could be a fairly short-lived subcommittee, really doing work in the span of, I don't know, a week before the arborist report.
And would this have the potential to expand into, if we get the urban forest management money, would we keep this group together, or would we close it and open it back up? Sorry, I guess I jumped right into clarifying questions, but
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I don't know, I really like the subcommittees being like very discreet and focused, and it gives opportunities for different people to be involved. So I think this one can focus on the admin guidelines and, and it'll disband when it's done, and when the money comes through, we can form new subcommittees as needed. That's what I would recommend.
yes, Polly, so maybe if that's the vision, aside from my jumping in, fortunately, any other clarifying questions around that, or a different perspective about what that committee would cover?
I think I'd rename it.
Yeah.
What would you name it?
Heritage Tree Admin Guideline Ad Hoc Subcommittee. Sound like that was a very specific task of that committee.
Yeah.
And then Commissioner Headley, I heard the term of it would be this month through July, or did you want through August?
Let's just say through August to give us some time, just in case there's some additional work that happens after the July EQC meeting.
Public comment?
Yeah, any other, before we have for public comment, any other clarifying questions? Okay, fantastic. Ms. Lunder, could you check and see if we have any public comment on item D4?
Absolutely. Any member of the public wishing to comment on item D4, we have comment cards over there that you could hand to myself or Ori. If you're on Zoom, you can press the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen and we will unmute you, or you can press *9 if you're calling in. Give it a moment for public comment. You don't see any in the room. You don't see any online. So we can move forward.
All right, excellent. So open that up for EQC, discussion, and then
A motion, and then just confident with that.
motion, and then adding member. How do we add members
In the motion.
in the motion? Okay, got it.
It might almost be time for a motion.
Well, I do want to make sure, is everybody clear about this one too? Because I think some of us who've been tree people have lived through this, but the difference between the ordinance and the admin guidelines and why we're going this route, and is that pretty straightforward and clear to everybody?
I think you should speak to that because it would be helpful.
But I'll just do it in a 10-second way. So the ordinance is more complex. And I think what we learned during the adjudication was that the arborist used the admin guidelines more. Well, it felt like she was using a lot of guidelines and a lot of things, textbooks and other things. So the admin guidelines is really the application of the ordinance. And in talking to Jillian a little bit, the ordinance will be hard to change, might get a lot of resistance, but she's going to use the admin guidelines probably, I don't know, 9 times out of 10. And it's easier to change that. So that's why, through advice from city staff, we zeroed in on maybe that'll be the immediate fix. At some point, we kind of would reserve the right to look at the ordinance again. But my understanding is when that happened a few years ago, it was a challenging exercise. And so I think we've got many other things to tackle next year. And I don't know that we wanted to revisit the ordinance. It's only been 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years. So that's the reason for focusing on the admin guidelines. Easier to change, more useful, less of a heavy lift for staff and for the EQC. Does that sound accurate? Scott, Commissioner Headley, when did Scott tell us when they updated that? It's been about 5 or 6 years. It's fairly recent, or is it a little bit
Yeah,
longer?
I mean, more than 2.
Yeah, okay. Okay, well, if there's no further discussion, would somebody like to make a motion? Well,
There might
sorry.
be a question of who might be interested in this subcommittee.
That's why I was asking, like, how do we,
Yeah.
so.
I'm interested, but also if other people are really excited, I don't have to do it.
And we can't have more than 3.
Should we get people to volunteer first and then that becomes a motion? Okay, so would anyone like to join the subcommittee along with Commissioner Headley?
I'd love to. That would be great.
Sure.
What about you, Jeff? Are you interested?
I could be, I think I would want to give everybody else an opportunity to jump in. I'm happy to connect my 3 Mary friends in District 5 to the process. They're very excited. So sorry, there were a few residents in District 5 that provided a lot of feedback. And so I'm happy to either join or get out of the way and connect that. Anybody else interested or? Okay, well then I'm fine to be a third. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah. Well, I move that we create this Heritage Tree Ordinance Administrative Guidelines Ad Hoc Subcommittee with Chair Schmidt and Commissioners Hill and Headley.
I'll second.
All right, should we take a roll call vote, Ms. Lunker?
Yes, let me repeat the motion. We have a motion from Commissioner Headley and a second from Vice Chair McKenna to create a Heritage Street Ordinance Admin Guideline Ad Hoc Subcommittee with Chair Schmidt, Commissioner Hill, and Commissioner Headley. Can I take a vote now? Sound good? Okay. I will do roll call vote. For those in the room, Commissioner Hill, do we need to do the time period? Okay, let's revise the motion to have the time period to end in August, at the August meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. Motion to create the Heritage Tree Ordinance Admin Guidelines Ad Hoc Subcommittee with Chair Schmidt, Commissioner Hill, and Commissioner Headley to disband at the August EQC meeting. Okay, roll call vote, Commissioner Hill,
Yes.
Vice Chair McKenna,
Yes.
Chair Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Meyer,
Yes.
Commissioner Headley,
Yes.
and Commissioner Kizel, absent, Commissioner Peligrio, part absent. The motion passes. with 5 and 2 absent.
Fantastic. All right, tail end of it now. So we're moving to section E, reports and announcements. So now we can hear reports and announcements from staff and commissioners. How about we start with city staff?
Do you have anyone?
Okay. So in the realm of Cap 5, in our efforts to eliminate fossil fuels in city operations, we have been exploring other funding opportunities. As we've discussed, so we submitted for an Energize grant through the state. We received notification that we were tentatively awarded, and so we're working through providing clarifications. That would give us $92,000 to support EV charging for the corporation yard. Just as an update, that's looking at an expandable DC fast charger that would be placed in kind of the pull-through configuration so that we can kind of keep some of our refueling operations. And then there would be another charger behind the gate to support the vehicles at that site. We're also working through the much larger EV charging installation at City Hall and continue to work through that effort. In regard to solar, we've been working with PCE on their GovPV program. That's solar for public buildings, and so that the PPAs or power purchase agreements for that were authorized by council and then executed by the city manager. I think sometime between in the last couple months, and the contract. The on-call contract to replace the roofs to make sure that we can have rooftop installations is going to the city council on June 25th. And so that's very exciting. And I think that those are the big two for me. Turn back to you.
Those are great updates. The June 25th meeting also includes the city budget adoption. And there was a hearing on that previously. I just want to underscore that there was an EJ environmental justice study session last night at city council. And I'd recommend watching the recording as there's some interesting connections with our work, including adding provisions around indoor air quality and other resiliency things to the environmental justice element. And I'll leave it with that. Oh, one more thing. We did participate in the Juneteenth event this last weekend and would like to acknowledge the holiday today. And thank you all for showing up on this holiday.
So any updates from commission?
Yeah, I can go. I have one update, but first I want to say, Cap 5 has been such a, I don't know, like a shining star in our focus as a city. And I just want to acknowledge Ori that because you've really taken this ball and run with it. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. And yeah, please keep going, even though in our minds, it isn't our top priority because you are doing all this great work. So thank you. All right. The thing I want to invite everyone to is the July 4th celebration over at Burgess. The 350 Silicon Valley Menlo Park climate team is going to be there with a table talking about home electrification. And we'll have information that the city has provided us or will soon about the Belhaven program that we're rolling out, that $4.5 million. So if you're in Belhaven and you want to learn more, come talk to us. And if you're just any city resident and you want to learn more about electrification, come talk to us too.
Awesome. Please.
I'll just, make a note, Peninsula Clean Energy is exploring an assistance program that will probably go to the board this month, I believe. But it's related to SGIP, Self-Generation Incentive Program, which PCE is hoping to connect residents with the state funding, which would allow low-income residents to install solar and storage, essentially free of charge. So that money is coming from the state later this year. It's about $280 million. 110 of it is earmarked to PG&E's territory. And PCE is hoping to get about $4.6 million of that money to its customers. So it's a it could be a really neat opportunity for folks to get some free solar and storage in their homes. So that might be coming down with it.
I've got a handful. I'll go really quick. So in July, we'll be notified on the Cal fire work, the grants. There's 3 pieces, and if you're interested, please make sure, you know, we're talking about different pieces. So the city submitted for the urban forest management plan. That'll be our guiding document for the next 40 years of planting, primarily in Bellhaven. Fantastic. Hopefully that will come back to EQC time and time again. There's also 2 other ones if you're interested in these pieces. Canopy, the nonprofit, is working, submitted 1.5 to get actual trees in the ground. So the plan was submitted by the city. Canopy submitted a second grant, same application, all interconnected. So there'll be, if we get that, there'll be a lot of community-based tree plantings. There'll be a lot of education and outreach. Fantastic. And then the third is Job Train was the lead. And like I said, these are all interconnected. That's around green jobs, workforce development. If you don't know Job Train, definitely we could talk offline, but there's going to be a lot of attention to urban forestry if we win 1, 2, or 3 of these grants. So please keep that in mind and reach out to myself or Nancy, or we can connect you with any of those teams. The second is if you're interested in some of the work that John and I are doing with Menlo Park City School District, that's a pretty exciting piece of work. The bond's going to be the biggest piece, but I would assume going into next year, we're going to be talking about a lot of the same kind of things we're talking about. So, you know, if you have an interest in working with schools and advising and getting kids involved, there'll be opportunities for that. Related to that is our work with Miss Ward. And so I think we will probably try to report back on what that looks like, but I'm super excited about student engagement because I've seen that work and it's really inspiring. So please reach out. The last couple are, I want to echo what Rachel said about the EJ study session. That is super important to the Bellhaven community. I spend a lot of time in those meetings in that community because we need to do everything we can to support folks who haven't had that support in the past. So there are lots of pieces of the EJ that will intersect with our work. And so part of the cross commission interest that we talked about is eventually, I think it's going to take all of us to make that happen over the coming probably 5 to 10 years. So definitely check out EJ. The last thing I would say is in some of my other activities, I've been meeting a lot of people, and I was able to connect a resident with 350 and John and Lindan and everything. And I love this idea, and it goes back to what Susanna was saying about I just want to personally say that I have an ambition as chair to make sure we do onboarding really well. I'm glad we had the opportunity to chat and get you in. I wish we'd had a chance to connect a little bit more, but I'd love the chair to inherit this responsibility of making this the best commission in the city and finding people that are out there, connecting them into the work, encouraging them to attend, even if they don't make the commission, helping them know what it takes to become part of a commission, because people don't know. And I think there are a lot of folks working in this space who just don't really think about the EQC. So not that I want to dethrone planning as the commission to be on, but I kind of want to do that. So I think we had a lot more applicants this time around, and I would love to see that continue. So anyway, I will get off that little soapbox, but I'd say as you're talking to people, and if they have an interest, like, let's grab a coffee with them. Let's get them interested. Let's tell them how to get on the commission. If they don't make it this time, then they'll make it next time. So I would just say, yeah, just please be thinking about that as we move forward. That's it for me.
So I just wanted to highlight Commissioner Hill's work. She put together with a colleague, Valerie Dubois, a nice 30-minute webinar on how to electrify your home, and thought that would be a great resource for folks out there that are curious about the process. It was really informative and well done and concise. So connect with her on LinkedIn if you're interested in finding the video.
All right. Well, I think if there are no other updates, then It feels like we're adjourned. Thanks for sticking with us.
Adjourned at
Thank you,
8:39.
Chair.
Thank you.
You can stop recording.
Good to see you all. Bye.
See you later.